supervising.
And we're live.
It feels a lot like
Okay.
I'm actually supervising.
So today is Tuesday, June 11th, and we are here for the Student Services Committee meeting. And we are called to order at 6:30 p.m. Has the meeting been properly posted?
It has.
Okay. This is Board of Education Student Services Committee meeting. There is a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance at the board committee meetings. There will be no full board action taken at any board committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district's YouTube page. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit our School District of Menominee Falls YouTube site. Menominee Falls, we are located in the Village Hall Upper Level Conference Room, 3344-3345, W156N8480 Pilgrim Road, Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. We don't have any minutes to approve, and so we will jump right into discussion items, and do we have Dan
Yep, let me just give a call to Mr. Halverson.
Halverson, virtual
Yep.
listening in here, as he is the director of.
Hello, Mr.
Student
Halverson,
Services.
it's Mr. Munoz, just giving you a call. Just, we are in open session, just in the first Student Services Committee meeting. Board Member Rennis has called the meeting and we're gonna have you listen again on the phone, just like we had talked about.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, welcome Dan. Okay, the first discussion item is a review of the safety upgrades for the 2023-2024 school year.
Yeah, and there's several documents that you have in front of you, information, a couple of things, and I'll walk through this, and I have walked through some of these things in regular board meetings, but just to get into a little bit more depth, to bring it first into the Student Services Committee meeting at the February 12th, 2024 school board meeting. Our Director of Technology did a presentation that is already public, so that at that February 12th, 2024 meeting, and it was labeled SDMF Safety and Security Updates. So there was detailed information in this slide presentation. I won't run through it word for word. Like I said, it's already been made public at the meeting, but I will give an overview of that presentation, which I thought was very good, which I thought was a very thorough presentation of those things that we have done. And then there are a few other things that I've added as well. So, like I said, that presentation is already out there. Some of the new safety items this school year, including but not limited to some of the following: introduce Speak Up, Speak Out, which is the Department of Justice Office of School Safety implementation. So that's a tip line that's being used in all of our schools. That's pretty common around the state. So we're excited to be utilizing that this past school year, but into next school year as well. We implemented school safety corners on the websites. So there's several examples at all of the buildings. So if you go to all of the buildings and go to safety and security, there's examples on the website. Well, they'll talk through all the different safety initiatives in each building that's building specific. So that was new this year as well. Initiated camera access for the police department 24/7, 365. Meaning with an MOU created and agreed to by myself and the chief of police. So that was new, that's never happened before in this school district. We've had security cameras for a while, but we have never had the police have access inside of our buildings at say 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning if there was something going on. They now have that, and the chief of police and I have had that MOU in place for several months now.
What is a memo of understanding, is that?
Yeah, memorandum of understanding. So we had everybody look at it from the police department and the school district with our legal counsels. We had a couple changes from the initial MOU, but it's standard practice from my experience in this area, and the chief was very agreeable.
I just had a question. I think at the time of the presentation, you didn't establish the number of cameras to be installed at, I think it was the Northwood in the elementary elementary, have you established the number of cameras that are needed at?
Yeah, the number of cameras, it's upwards of 80 cameras
Total, right?
total, but at the elementary schools, that's this summer. So the elementary school cameras, we've done the walkthroughs, we're confident we should have that finished by the end of the summer. Meaning the elementary school camera upgrades. One of the biggest things that we're working on now, this summer, it's a good question, is bringing up our infrastructure for all of these upgraded materials. So technology is always changing, it changes really fast. So with all of these, very up-to-date systems and cameras, we have to update the infrastructure around it as well. So those are the sorts of things we're working on this summer as well as the elementary school. So that is a good question.
Because I know the middle school's already been established in place.
They are. Middle schools is set and operating, the high school is set and operating. For the first time in the history of this district, we have cameras in stairwells. So cameras in all stairwells in the high school and the middle school. So we're excited about that increased level of safety, and that is an important piece that we have been actively utilizing. Our Change Security Camera Company, that's one big thing we did, while adding over $200,000 in physical infrastructure. So the actual company was changed in this whole process at the start of the year. And I had already reported that, but it's worth re-reporting that we went with a company that was able to give us quicker support, a little bit more hands-on and ready support, and they're doing a good job with that support. We're continuing our safety walkthroughs, which were initiated this year to make sure that all the building security needs are addressed, so we're continuing that. And we'll be building that into future years as well. We added an additional police officer. That was new, and the actual new officer went online on or about February 1st. So it was approved many months earlier, but it took some time with training and schedules and all of these sorts of things. So although the board approved it much earlier, it takes some time in order to get people's schedules aligned. But since around on or about February 1st, we've been operating with 3 full-time officers, which has been outstanding. And they've been very involved in programs that I have been involved in. For example, like the DARE programs. They were at all of Alt-Ed graduations, they were at our final graduations. They're very present, and from the biggest compliment that you can give to a school resource officer is to say that they're community-based policing officers, and they are trained in that respect. They are servicing us with respect to calls to service and all of these sorts of things, but they are very well versed in community-based policing, all of our officers.
I just have a quick question on
Yep.
the safety walk that you've been
Yep.
alluded to. How often does that occur?
Once a
Once a month?
Once a month, yes.
It's entailed.
So that's usually head up by the business department, and we have a safety coordinator. Our insurance companies are there, so that's a good question as well. So our insurance companies are involved because usually they're tied into decreasing the amount of risk for the district. Not just for our insurance and cost purposes, because they're wanting for us to be good stewards of all of those dollars that we're spending on insurance. So it's usually, in my experience, insurance companies that do this sort of thing are usually your first go-to for levels of security and safety. Because they have a pretty robust structure that we can lean on, and quite honestly, we're paying for.
I'm just curious.
Well, and from a slips, trips and falls,
Yes,
critically important to have them there to help us do preventative maintenance.
or things like ladders.
Yep.
In different places. It seems simplistic, but ladders that are placed in certain locations and all of these sorts of things. It can be problematic, and it's something that we're actually watching, and it's something we're using our cameras to look at as well. We're looking at these sorts of things, and if something happens, how they're recovering, if somebody's injured, that sort of thing, lost stays.
And facilities as part of those walkthroughs as well?
Absolutely, they are.
Up until yesterday, Isabella was on the committee and was our liaison to the workers' comp and insurance company and did our state and federal reporting.
Yeah, so actually Isabella is very dialed into that aspect of it because she was directly involved in it. So aside from that, we added 3 teachers before the 23-24 school year. And I think it's important that this is in school safety because decreasing class sizes helps everything. That was an initiative that was approved by this board, thank you. Before you were on the board, but still the board in general. Sorry. So they approved those 3 new teachers last year. I bring that up because we maintained that increase and then went beyond that with more teachers. So it wasn't just the 3 teachers that were added since my arrival, but it was another 5 or 6 teachers that we've added on top of that in order to help with reading, to help with a lot of class sizes, to decrease the number of class sizes, because that is, it is a school safety matter, no question about it. Participated in mock safety drill with the Freighter Police Fire Department, June of 2024. We'll be getting that into the next item, but long and short of it, that's something that went in probably the better part of 8-9 months worth of planning. So there was quite a bit that went into that. Mr. Halverson was actually there as an observer. And I was there as well, along with several administrators, a lot of police. We learned a lot, it was a good drill, it's a good starting point for us, but we'll get to that in the next item. Any other questions about safety upgrades? We have more that we're doing.
I was gonna say, as we look forward, both wearing my hat from the finance committee as well as our hat here, as we try to put the strategic plan together.
Yep.
And know how much safety is gonna pivot into there.
Yeah, it's a good question with respect to strategic plan, is we are gonna integrate safety in the strategic plan. I think that definitely came out of our last, we had a work session with respect to the steering committee and the strategic plan that safety is gonna be integrated in all the different pillars. And after we get through some interview schedules this week that have been pretty heavy for the athletic director and the assistant principal, we'll be getting to that right after that. But it's a good point that school safety will be a portion of our strategic plan.
And then also that 10-year,
Capital
Capital
needs
needs plan.
document, yes. So that's actually a good point as well. The 10-year capital needs document that is mostly housed in the finance committee. That's new this year as well, but it's a good point, thank you. That the 10-year capital needs document is new this year, but they're pretty common in school districts. Because it allows for us to look at a strategic plan and say, okay, what are the big things that we're gonna be doing, including safety, not limited to just like roofs like we're doing this summer at the middle school, but safety upgrades and different sorts of safety upgrades and getting those sorts of things on that 10-year capital needs document so that we have a rotation for these items. Because as good as all these increases are, there will be a point when the cameras and all the things that we've just put in, when they get dated and there's gonna need to be a replacement. Think about it like a computer replacement cycle.
And
Same.
infrastructure too,
Yes, absolutely.
and security there.
Yes. Other questions for, we're excited about the advances that we've made, but we're also excited about where we're gonna be going with safety. With Mr. Halverson coming on board and, I think that more gets into the second bullet point, but I wanna make sure that if you have any other questions.
and obviously you don't have to recite them today, but I think it would be curious to see with the new additions being brought in, are we able to do a year-over-year comparison in terms of incidents? Now that we've added the
Absolutely.
SRO, what are we seeing in terms of behavior issues at the schools and how does that correlate? So I would love to see some data or a summary of kind of what the year encompassed last school year. Again, to be able to prepare and plan for next school year.
It's a good point. I think another one of our items that is on the agenda are some referral numbers from this year, of which we have some unofficial numbers that we're ready with, but that is one of our items later, but that is a very good point as well. That adding a resource officer and increasing what did that do with our metrics and our data, that is a very good point going into next year.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments on that item, we can move on to the review of the multi-agency safety drill that was on June 1st. It was a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm very thankful. I just want to start with thank yous to the police department, to Freighter, to Waukesha County Emergency Management, to the volunteers, I think, who were working with some of our medical professionals that day that were the play actors, if you will, in the mock drill. Because they had that happening that day. The weather held off, which was great. Didn't rain until about noon when we were mostly wrapping up. So thanks to Mr. Halverson, the administrators that were present, of which there were multiple, all of our school resource officers were present, or most were present, with multiple other officers, lieutenants, captains. So there was multiple members of the leadership available and many members at Freighter. So thank you to all of these groups for putting so much time, effort, energy into this drill that involved not just the school district, but all these agencies. The one agency, Waukesha County Emergency Management, they were directly involved with the unfortunate situation at that parade in Waukesha. So they were able to provide some really good 30,000 foot thoughts for us, like in the room. And Mr. Halverson was just visiting and sitting in as an observer, as he'll be starting July 1. I was in a mock incident command area in a different location, and we were going through multiple scenarios with mock students, not any students here, just pictures, scenarios, situations, and there was an awful lot of learning that went on. There were some things about our current procedures which we like very much. The fact that we're using Raptor, the Raptor system and our electronic systems that we have in place, they're very good. We're not the only ones that use it. I mean, there's other things like this. We use Raptor, but there are other things that other districts use in order to consolidate it and make it digital with respect to making sure we can count all of the students. A lot of different organizations had different purposes that day. And sitting in the incident command, the police was more, they wanted to make sure everybody was safe and secure, which is their main job, right? But Freighter, it was really interesting to see the inner workings of their system and their structure. Their on-call administrators, some of the things that they would do for the district, some of the things that we would do from their people, directly from their staff that were working with us. So we were excited to not only collaborate, but hear from them trouble that they had, improvements that they could make, and which they're making, and then suggestions for us. Like go bags and different things, and stop the bleed kits, which is something that came out that's something that we can do and we're actively gonna do just to make sure, in that 1% or less than 1% of the time that something like this could happen, that was their recommendation, which we're gonna take. And there's other things as well. There's bigger takeaways about what is our next drill. Like when we started having all of these questions and we did our debriefs, 10:30, 10:45 that morning, we were there from about 8:30 and it was an active full day with real scenarios or morning. But when we got to 10:45, 10:30, 10:45, it was more Mr. Halverson and I, after we were done talking about everything, going, okay, it's more about the next drill, it's more about the start of school and the type of drills we're gonna do with our staff in order to refine us even more. We learned this much with a smaller group, what can we do with our larger group once everybody comes back? And Mr. Halverson, do you have any input on that part? I know we had talked about that quite a bit, right before it started raining outside of the cars there.
Yeah, as we were walking out, that was one of the biggest things, aside from all the learning that was going on constantly, was really just what other types of tabletop exercises can we replicate for each building so that they can be, you know, prepared on their own teams, but then taking it to a district-wide level for sure. You know, one of the phrases that it's come up before is you will respond to the next crisis as you are right now, not as you want to be. And I remember hearing that at the Department of Justice training and them also letting us know that the Office of School Safety will help us design tabletop exercises.
Yeah.
So that's going to be one of our biggest resources as a district, is being able to tap into some of the things the Department of Justice offers us.
And the Office of School Safety and under the Department of Justice, they're the ones that handle speak up, speak out. So it's a connected deal, and they're extremely helpful with some of these scenarios. That's a really good point, Mr. Halverson. Anything else there, sir?
I don't know, I think you covered it. It was a great opportunity for all of us to get together and really see what, I guess, the other roles of an emergency situation are. So I think it was great learning for everybody.
Yeah, I think I missed the fire department, thanking the fire department, they were present as well. So I apologize for missing them, I'm sitting right next to their folks, but we have many different groups there involved in assisting. Not just everybody, like I said, had goals for their own organizations, but everybody wanted to help everybody. Like, I wanted to know what Freighter needed, or, you know, what would be the place for me to be in this exact situation, you know, and remote evacuation and family reunification is a big piece, right? Like our friends in Germantown, I think they did a lot of things right. And I live in the village here now, but at the time I lived really close in a short-term place next to their reunification center. It was after one of our board meetings when that incident happened, and it was interesting to watch their reunification going on. They did so many things really well that, you know, that piece for the schools is huge. In other words, counting every kid, it seems simplistic, but it's huge. Like, not just the students, but the staff and anybody who may be in the building for like an IEP or somebody delivering something, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
So think along those lines, because schools are huge, right? You know, we have thousands and we're like small little villages inside of villages.
Right.
So those sorts of things, and to really get into the specificity of it, not just in our systems, but what do we do if this happens or if that happens? But there were multiple scenarios that definitely had our staff think through our systems and things that we're gonna change, that Mr. Halverson and I have talked about, and that we're gonna adjust going into next school year, and that we'll drill with those adjustments in mind.
What were some of the scenarios that were used?
There were scenarios where a parent or a staff member showed up at the hospital on their own without us knowing about it, meaning they didn't check into any of our Raptoring systems and they just ended up at the hospital, and then accounting for that, and how do we make sure that we have the full count? You know, that sort of thing. I think there was a pregnant mother situation, staff members, so it was all the situations that you could consider in this sort of deal.
Okay. So this Raptor management system,
Yeah.
are families automatically enrolled in that?
No,
Okay,
no, so when you come in, I'll give an example.
okay,
So when you come into any one of our buildings, you have to Raptor in, so
Mhm.
you have to give your ID, it goes into a system, it checks you. So that's Raptor, but Raptor is much bigger than that.
Mhm.
I'll give an example from today. There was a test we heard about at like 7:30, that there would be a test at 11 a.m. today. Well, I was busy doing interviews and stuff like that,
sure.
kind of forgot the email came across. So then at 11, when we were just starting an interview, everybody's phone started to Raptor off,
Yeah.
which just means that it's gonna ring, and everybody who's on it, staff members, administrators, we all got notified at like 11 today, just when I apologized to the guy, I said, that's right, you know, but it's an important aspect of the other system, is to make sure that we're accounting for everybody's child
Mhm.
and staff.
Right.
And anybody who's in the building. That is a huge part of what Raptor does. But it's also a safety mechanism for us to communicate inside of the system. So if I'm sitting at Ben Franklin, and this happens a lot, if I'm at a different building and they start a drill at a different building, I can see it, I can jump in and hit, messaging, and I can see them talking. Meaning the teacher's talking or the administrator's talking about who goes where, who does what, this is only a drill, I can see it all live.
So it's more of an internal system.
It is an internal system, but it was one that they talked about a lot in this drill. Meaning the police know it because of our school resource officers, they're connected to the system. But like Freighter seeing it, they were very interested and happy about it.
Sure.
That level that we're using, but we're gonna ramp that up. I mean, there's other systems, but I think Raptor is very good. It's more about drilling inside of the system.
Does it also work like for weather, so when we had like tornadoes and stuff?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes,
it's not just like security,
yes,
it is-
no, it's all levels of it. Mr. Halverson?
Yeah, there was a couple other points, because you mentioned the reunification, and that was one of the biggest things we wanted to test. Because one of the scenarios was identifying students that were showing up at the emergency room, or also identifying possible victims of the incident we were doing. And the Raptor and having the rosters lined up and being able to have people identify those students was what the Raptor was used for, because the rosters are contained in every teacher's classroom for an emergency.
That's right.
Yeah, upon hire, each staff person, it works with technology to have Raptor put on their phones and devices, and then they each have their own login and they work in it. The student lists are uploaded, but students don't actually have access to Raptor or anything like that. And then we have different groups for administrators to just communicate with each other,
Yep.
and then for the whole to communicate with each other. And so it's a part of your onboarding, you're immediately brought into it and told how to use it, and it seems to be well used.
Yeah, and it's more about, this year we've more ramped up the use of it, and it's more about getting used to the system. Because coming into it, there has to be an expectation, I'll give you an example, that we can check if they're drilling. Right, we do this. So if they're drilling in Raptor and they're checking for kids, we can see at what percentage they've checked in kids. Right, that's one way for us to say, okay, 50% isn't enough, it's gotta be 80, whatever, 90% or higher. Think about attendance rates, right? So that's something that we're looking into, that came up a little bit as well. Because you're gonna, I think Mr. Halverson brought it up, that you're gonna be as good at this in live the way you are right now. So drilling it matters, and it's unfortunate that this has to be thing one in an education system, but it does. It absolutely does.
So practice how you play, so.
Yes, sir.
Is there on the plan coming out of it now and sort of how everything's fresh to put some sort of a report together, because this type of an event is new to our district? And I would love to be able to,
Yeah.
if there are pictures that are worth sharing, or the teams or whatever,
Sure.
to be able to put together some sort of a summary of what took place, people know kind of scope that we're comfortable sharing, and then talk about some of the takeaways that you've discussed
Sure.
here. I think it would be important to be able to say that this is just the start of it, but that it's a peace of mind for a lot of our community to be able to know that all of these organizations are coming together and working in collaboration. And the effort, you said it took like 8 to 9 months of planning to be able to pull something like this together, so I think it's important for us to be able to have something like that on our website, to be able to promote how seriously, above and beyond, we're taking safety and planning for other unplanned events.
Why don't we put that right at the top of Mr. Halverson's list for July 1? But
Sorry for the homework.
But I know he'd be very excited to do it. School safety is very near and dear to his heart, and from the educator side, he's an expert, and we'll work on it together.
Cause I would have loved to have had like some sort of a press release coming out of this, like it was successful, but it is what it is. He starts in July, well, let's recap it and have it be something that we showcase.
Yeah, I think we just need to be cautious with that. We were dealing with people mocked up with,
I get it, I understand, that's where,
with wounds and fake wounds.
I get it.
And they did a good job. Because they were there relatively early I was there getting coffee and make sure everything is all set, and they were in these tents and getting people mocked up like it was a Hollywood,
Yep,
like a Hollywood, yeah,
well, spare us the gore, but part
yeah.
of it's a matter
So
of,
I think,
I don't want to over sensationalize or do anything of that
Yeah.
nature, but I do feel like part of the reason I go to an imagery is to see the scale of it, cause we weren't there, so then part of it is if imagery is not available for a variety of reasons. And you don't wanna give away the whole farm in terms of what our security plans are, so
absolutely,
there's give and take, but I think there's enough here to promote the effort
Absolutely.
and the alignment and the impact this is having on the greater community, not just our schools, when you talk about the entities that are involved. I think there's a lot to be learned and benefited from, so.
yeah, we were all proud to be part of it, we were proud to have so many other members of our community, assisting not just the schools, but looking at the larger situation. So that was great, we'll get something together, certainly.
So this safety drill, is this just like a one-time deal, or is it something that will be repeated in the future after,
We're actually, it's a good question, we're having a follow-up meeting here that we're gonna bring that exact point up. Because there was some discussion about a future bigger drill, and which would take multiple years in the planning. The amount of time that we had to put this together was enough to put together, we actually had 2 different tabletop presentations. I would say that this last drill was more of a tabletop, half full drill, because there was definitely some full action going on, just not inside of our buildings. We did have an event, I would wanna say January, where Mr. Gebauer, myself, the Valley View principal, and several other staff were involved with a group of, say, 30 or so, Freighter, police, fire department, to kind of give a preview. We actually went through, everybody was sitting at tables that, it was like, it was in Freighter, it was wonderful, it was like, I'd say 4 times this room, and it was directors and we went through just a full tabletop only. There was nothing outside of that room, we were just walking through scenarios, and that was extremely valuable. We had a nurse there, just listening to the hospital and the police and the fire department, emergency management was there. That happened in January. So we've been building up for the whole year, kind of to this point. But we're gonna take it further. Mr. Halverson and I were committed to using this as a staging point, as sort of a springboard to what more we can do more efficiently and more effectively with our staff in the district, minimally.
And the go bags that you were referring to?
Yeah.
What is the concept there?
It's, we have about 4,000 students, and so with all the different classrooms, it's more about having certain materials available right away.
Okay.
For in case of an emergency, so
Sure.
I would call it, when I was a principal, which is now 5-6 years ago now, we call them ice bags. Because
Sure, like this ultimate
it was kinda-
perspective of,
it was a play on words and people liked it, like, oh, an ice bag, but in case of emergency. And you can call them whatever you want, some are go bags or ice bags and there's different things that you would put in them depending on what is agreed upon, but stop the bleed kits would be one.
sure,
There are other things, class rosters, so but that's something that Mr. Halverson will be dialed into for the start of the school year,
Awesome.
okay?
I'm assuming that this will have some content that factors into training for that week of bringing everybody back, either new staff or.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. That was part of the intent about making sure to get it done before the end of the school year, but also not disrupting our end of the school year, which we didn't do,
Okay.
any other questions or comments on that? Okay, the next item is review of school psychologist and school social worker duties and positions.
Yeah, we have some wonderful school psychologists and school social workers. There's a report in front of you. And actually, I'm glad Leah is here today because this was, yeah. Well, I say that because this report,
I was there.
she was there. So this report was brought, and then we'll throw it on the website in the morning or tonight.
We'll get everything uploaded
Yep,
tomorrow
we'll get
morning.
it uploaded in the morning. But this report here, the pupil services staff, so the psychologists and the social workers, they wanted to meet with Leah and I about adding a 4th school psychologist, which we thought was a good idea and we have since done, alright? Wanna be really clear about it. So, for the first time,
Well, so I just wanna make it clear, you'll see a picture of 4 human beings
yeah,
on the front page. So when they asked for this meeting, I was just a smidge confused because I said we gave the 4th position already
yes,
for the
yes.
beginning of this school year. The team chose to hire a part-time person
it's an important
instead
point.
of a full-time person because they preferred him over the other candidates, but he could only work part-time. So it was their choice to do that for this school year, so I was like, you really do.
Person right here? Is that the person?
Yeah,
Yeah, so the important point here is that I think there might have been an understanding that we were gonna reduce that or keep it at a 0.5.
Yeah.
But it was always our, and you know, it's full-time. I mean, these positions, part of this presentation and me zipping through parts of it are looking at these positions. You can't run a school district without a school psychologist, right? They're absolutely critical, not just for special ed, but for gifted and talented, for a lot of other systems and processes. Most, if not all, school psychologists are at or very near the PhD level. So they have the type of training that is at or near the top in our educational system.
yeah, they have a specialist degree, so it's postmasters, but not a doctorate.
Right,
It's this in between that's,
right.
they have to be a school psychologist, and so once they decided to pick a part-time person, then that's kind of what they had for this school year. I do think there was some miscommunication amongst the team that it would stay that way, but I guess I was a little bit more strict for next year than I wasn't just allowing the team to go 0.5. For next school year, I said it has to be a 1.0, it has to be full-time. Part-time is not optional, and we have a very long runway to make that happen, so I anticipate us having 4 full-time school psychologists for next school year.
Yeah, we're,
They did do a nice report of what they do for the district and how they work together.
So I need to back up.
Yep, go ahead.
So they hired we gave them rein to hire a full-time.
Budgeted for a full-time.
And budgeted for a full-time, hired a part-time. And because I looked through this and they talk about like, why do you need help?
I know, but
So this person
I
is
don't
only,
know,
so this person's only gonna be here till the end of the year, I mean,
unless he signs the full-time contract.
okay, so that's what I wanted to get, I wanted to clarify, so
Yeah.
this person is.
So if he signs a full-time contract, yes, if he doesn't, we will be hiring another full-time, and we still do have candidates from a recruitment already that we can turn to bring into the district. So,
So is a full-time job posted or no?
and interviewed for.
and interview,
So we've not just posted, we've interviewed and we have candidates ready
Ready
to
to go.
hire.
okay.
How
We're
long
actually-
has this person been hired for?
Started partway through the year.
Yeah.
I don't know, they were a very picky pupil services team. They didn't pick somebody for the first round at the beginning of the year. And then I honestly can't remember exactly, but it was towards the end of first semester that he started. And so being part-time and hiring into the year, he kind of was district-wide, helping and assisting wherever there were needs. So he wasn't actually assigned to any specific school. For next year, we will be full-time with Chelsea at the high school. First time with a new person, Brooke has moved to another district. So we just hired, and I don't remember his last name, but we hired Owen. I'm very informal here, we hired Owen to be full-time in the district. We're not exactly sure yet where we'll be placing him, but we will have full-time at North, full-time at the high school, and then our other 2 full-time school psychologists will be at the elementary, split between those 2. And so we're kind of waiting to see if Travis wants to stay with us full-time or not. to then decide between him and Owen or Owen and the other new person, where we feel they have the best fit. Do you feel better suited at the middle school or the elementary level? But we are making a shift to make sure that the middle school is no longer shared, it'll be full-time.
Yes.
So that
And
next,
the principals are very excited about this change. I've talked to them.
so it's not 2 part-time, we're gonna actually hire 1 full-time
We will have 4 full-time,
designated
8-hour-a-day people.
to staying in that building.
One for the high school, one
One
for the
for-
middle school, and then 2 for
Two
both elementary.
For the
all
4
of them.
elementaries.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
yes.
So I think they do a very good job on page 3 and page 4 of getting to what are the duties for a school psychologist, the duties for a social worker, but also the duties of the psychologist and the social worker together. So like for example, psychologists, IQ testing for relevant special education evaluations. Lead and support academic related student support meetings, support with academic interventions, facilitating system level changes in tiered intervention. These are big things, early entrance and grade acceleration. For social work, they have 11 different things, which I won't go through one by one, they're all listed here, but I'll just list a few out.
So
Leading attendance teams.
I wanted to ask in regards to early entrance and grade acceleration, you're talking about gifted and talented.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, a school psychologist is absolutely necessary with respect to, because that's a statistical measure for, which would be facilitated by a school psychologist.
Yeah, there's objective testing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that'll come up as a focus in our committee, I think, just from previous discussions, is attendance and social workers lead attendance teams. So that's listed in here under point 2, and intervene with families with attendance concerns. So that's a part of the social worker's job under point 2. They assist families, child development days, coordinate homebound instruction. So homebound instruction sometimes occurs with special education students where, which is different than homeschool. Homebound is, we're paying for it, we're facilitating a one-on-one based on an IEP need. So that needs to be facilitated by a human being, and that would be a social worker. McKinney-Vento, that's an important one, I'm skipping around, but number 7, McKinney-Vento is homelessness. I mean, that's the best way, if there's homeless families or students in our community, that's McKinney-Vento. So there's identification, support of those families, and then qualification for obviously attendance in school. There's also blessings in a backpack, guardianship issues. That's an important point on point 11, guardianship issues and alerts. So there's quite a bit of work for our social workers. We're very proud of all these teams. They do a wonderful job. Our social workers and our school psychologists are tireless educators, often not, it's
They work like behind the scenes.
very much behind the scenes, but the
Recognize,
critical educators to have the whole system run. And I've talked to most, if not all of them myself, and they're just wonderful educators, and we absolutely need them. The psych and the social worker part at the bottom, where they have 1 through 9 and mix things that they do together, I think that's a good page as well, because it shows how those school psychologists and school social workers are working together. So, example, point 4, assist with crisis management. That's an important point. Sometimes students can be in crisis. Well, that's gonna take multiple staff members. Administrators are probably involved, child abuse and neglect. Where was that number? Evidence-based assessment and intervention. I list that because the law changed about 6-7 years ago. So evidence-based interventions is technically for somebody older like me who did grad school before 2000, so it's 20-some years ago when I got my master's degree. Back then, it wasn't about evidence-based intervention. That wasn't the law yet. It was discrepancy-based. So some of these words to kind of get together is discrepancy-based versus an evidence-based intervention. Anybody before, 7 or 8 years ago when the law changed, I could be off a little bit there. Discrepancy-based was the thing. Nowadays, it's evidence-based interventions. So when you hear the word say interventions, and that's a lot of what's being facilitated by these staff members.
Okay.
And they're critical aspects and legal aspects. So that's one of the reasons I really like their report, because I think it was very comprehensive. They have some data about ratios, which we're getting much closer to by having the fourth full-time.
And that was my next question
Yes.
is, you know, bringing on that, well, the half. But how did they feel that's supported? And are things going well in regards to, you know, looking at these ratios, feeling like that workload is manageable and,
It's better. I mean, the recommended ratios, I mean, every national organization has certain recommended ratios. And you do your best, like science teachers have recommended ratios are lower than what we could possibly run, and it's not that they're bad recommendations, these are good recommendations. For example, the ratio for school social workers is 1 to 250 for social workers, but I don't know anybody that does that as a practical matter.
Our numbers look very similar to other school
Yes,
districts. For whatever reason, these two national societies have recommendations that no school district is even close to.
okay,
But we're very
But
normed.
we're very normal, and as you can see, we really only have 3 school psychologists taking that 1 to something ratio. So next year, we will obviously see those all go down significantly by having another
Absolutely.
person. You know, cause right now you're looking at Chelsea, well, yeah, she has 2 schools, one of them being the high school. So, you know, not only does she have the high school, she has a whole nother school on top of that. And so even though it's obviously a considerably smaller school, I think what Valley View was, but we're gonna be taking every single, 500 some kids off her plate by her not having Valley View anymore.
That's right,
You know, so she can focus on the high school.
that's right.
So we're gonna see these numbers, have a significant drop by having a more equally divided breakdown between the 4 people. But I mean, obviously, having Travis did help ease with some burdens and being able to step in, especially with all those evaluations that they have to go to, so new eval, so it's not a relationship or a child that they've been the case manager for, it's a brand new thing, so that's perfect for him to start, and kind of take
Mhm.
off the plate, but yes, these numbers will look much, much better next year.
Yeah, I just think this was a good overview, especially for our first meeting, about a group of educators that don't often get a spotlight. But they're core critical to what we do. When I was a principal for almost 20 years, I had a school psychologist with me all the time. If I was going into meetings and tough meetings, if it was an at-risk meeting or a special ed meeting, as principals, they're people we depend on, and social workers as well. I mean, obviously, they have some different roles, but critical roles.
And I just wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit, I don't know if you guys were aware of that reach out room. I've been involved with like Michelle for the past couple of years, because when I did the tour initially, that room actually stood out to me, and so I've been actually working with her. And it's an amazing room, it's in Ben Franklin, and they have transformed that room into an amazing, place, and I have also connected them with some networking people that I know to actually even elevate it even more so, and that's where families, et cetera, donate items and give it to, families that may need temporarily, et cetera, so you should actually take a look in there, because they transformed it quite. But you haven't been there since then, so I've been there and talking to like Michelle, Michelle is in there, she's amazing. I mean, not to say that the other social workers aren't,
Yeah.
but it's because at Ben Franklin, they have that room, so if you ever get a chance. They've done really great things with that room.
I mean, a little teaser for the 25-26 school year, Alec, our new director of special ed, Mr. Halverson, who's on the phone.
Yep.
Myself, the social workers and the principals will probably be meeting at some point this school year to talk about, talk about 24-25, to talk about 25-26, to kind of make sure that, are these things working for us, with the Riverside Middle School pairing. So some of these are actually a little bit more natural, so the social worker having Riverside helps transition kids to the middle school, which is awesome. But does maybe the middle school need a full-time one and not a shared one? So we've had those discussions that led us to adding the fourth school psychologist. For this current, it's kind of funny, it's like weeks into still, this current school year and for 24-25 moving forward. And then we're gonna be looking into that next group of folks, for the following school year. Will it change? I don't know, but we're going to be bringing them to the next forefront, to look at, to make sure those things are all making sense and working for everybody.
Yeah, long and short of it, we're excited to be able to go full-time, like we had already established, even though we were just the 0.5. To now go 4 full-time school psychologists, we think that it's the right move. We think these are, I think it was really important to get this information, to kind of understand some core pupil services pieces. There's a lot of other people as well. Quest programming, there's counselors, there's obviously the administrators. But I think it was a good starting point, and they did such a good job on their presentation.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I would love, I'm gonna be a data nerd here tonight
Okay.
and say, I would love additional, we hear from time to time IEPs and we see numbers. I would love to be able to just keep a baseline of, what's the cases that they're seeing, how many students and families are they impacting, just getting a flavor or feel for the impact that they have, because again, the fact that we've invested in 4 helps showcase our value to this role and the support of our community. I would love to showcase that we're meeting their needs, and then we have data to be able to determine if we need to add more or figure out how to scale should our needs change.
Yeah, I'd be open to that discussion. I'd be open to, just like when we were adding all this reading support this year. Obviously, we're adding reading support because of data. We had some hard data about the reason why we're adding all of these additional reading support teachers. But to continue to look at our next bullet point in terms of, the referral numbers and our initial look at this whole year's worth of referral numbers.
Well, and I think we'll get the update too, once we have the 4th full-time, truly full-time.
Yeah.
Agreed.
How many of these projects now are they able to accomplish
Yep.
and say that, again, that they have that fully supported and are able to do what they need to do at the schools.
Honestly, I think teasing out the special ed department into its own little entity and having Alec just oversee that, and then also having direct oversight over the special ed teachers, et cetera, and more emphasis and focus. I think they're going to be more I wouldn't say qualified, but more trained in order to write their IEPs, et cetera. So then they're gonna improve all the way around and not get so much.
We're excited about the focus, they're excited about the focus.
Yeah.
And we're positioning people in the district to improve our level of service to students and staff. So, but we will see that as we transition, once Alex starts officially.
Sure.
He's working with us because he's in the district, but once his capacity switches on July 1, we've already forecast some of those locations, very similar, like the PSTs. I mean, that is definitely a future report, maybe that'll be in future agenda items, about the new structure for special education, where people are located, that sort of thing with Mr. Just.
Yeah.
But we can get to that in future agenda items. You don't wanna get ahead, we still have to do behavior.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments about the social workers and psychologists?
Nope, other than accolades for, really well done, succinct presentation, was on point.
By all them, all them.
Fantastic.
I agree.
Wonderful, that's why I wanted to use it.
And a
It
very
was-
good overview of exactly how it works and they work together.
Yeah. Maybe we'll put that in there.
We just need another full-time person. We need to make sure that they have a full-time,
Okay.
Maybe it's like a to be hired and.
not
Right.
0.5.
It was one of those moments where I was sitting there like, why didn't they
should just ask me, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it's okay.
But it was a great presentation, so
It was
we both learned a
outstanding.
ton and a lot of great stuff came from it. But they clearly put a lot of work into something that I probably just said, you have it.
I hope that Travis stayed full time, because that would
Yeah.
just be easy.
You didn't make them sweat a little to be able to earn
No.
the-
No.
Actually, no.
No, there was,
Oh.
I mean, I know you're gonna be really shocked to hear this, but David and I did almost no talking.
Oh, shocking.
A, it was a great presentation, and B, we kind of,
You were already sold.
yes.
Well, you can feel a little better because you knew you were saying yes, because you'd already said yes prior, but yes, shocker, we actually didn't talk much at all.
Not at all.
They had the presentation and went through it and they all had
Yeah.
the role that they played, so it was great to hear from them and I'm glad that they felt comfortable asking to meet with us and go through all that with us.
Yeah, it was a really good meeting. Excellent meeting.
Okay, so on to the next agenda item, student behavioral referrals.
Yep, this was asked for by the committee chair, and so this information we pulled right from our systems. So this isn't yet on the state databases yet. This is our internal systems. So I'll just run through it and kind of give a general overview of what you're looking at. Then some general impressions, and then any questions. So on the very top of this sheet, you can see majors and minors. And usually like 649 majors, 1,649 minors.
So this is for all students, correct?
This is for all students in the entire district,
Okay.
so all buildings. So, okay, so I'll start there.
Yep.
So on the left side, there's Ben Franklin, Shady Lane, Riverside, so that's RS, VV, Valley View, NMS is middle school, and HS is high school. So that designation is used across all of these graphs. So suspensions, there were 344 suspensions overall throughout the district, as we've measured it. And 153 of those 344 were in-school suspensions. Of the 344, 191 were out-of-school suspensions. So those, that's one way to look at the data is through suspensions, whether they be in school or out of school. But also minors, would be like running in the hallway or something like that, or I made that up, or cell phone violation, or throwing food in the lunchroom, or
Talking out of turn in the
yeah,
classroom.
something like that would be a minor. So you're gonna see something like that. One thing I wanna make note of, if you look at Ben Franklin, where there's some issues in the 22-23 school year,
Mhm.
the numbers are substantially low
Mm-hmm.
across the board. So minors, you'll see very,
Interesting, even more interesting, is
very,
that it's down, I initially then jumped to Riverside saying, hey, there were some students that moved, but Riverside numbers are also down.
yeah, Riverside numbers look pretty good too, yep. And when you look at when I look at these generally speaking, Ben Franklin had a pretty good year, most of our schools had a pretty good year. If I were to look, and this was already reported publicly, some of this data, if you remember when the middle school did their presentation for the whole board, if you remember that, they had some partial year data, the middle school did. That trend unfortunately continued. So that some of the higher numbers with respect to number of suspensions, and the total number of students with a suspension. So the top number, 150, were the number of suspensions at the middle school. But 83 students made up those 150 suspensions.
Okay.
That's how to read that
Sure.
data. So if you go up to Ben Franklin, they had 25 suspensions. Of those 25, only 15 students made up the 25. At Shady Lane, there were only 6 suspensions, of which 3 students made up the 6 suspensions. Same with Riverside, they had 27, about the same as Ben Franklin, and bigger kids, and 17 students of the 27 made up the 27. And the same for Valley View, very similar numbers there. So if you were looking at this from a pure statistician's perspective, there is an outlier here. But we kind of saw that mid-year when Mrs. Kovars was doing her presentation. It was actually a point that she made about there's less minors and more majors. I think most board members were at that presentation, but that came up. And it was a point I think several board members made a point about. Unfortunately, the trend continued a little bit, there's 150 suspensions, of which 83 students. Just to give a comparison, and I think the only comparison that we can make in the district is looking at the high school, larger building, one more grade, they had 112 suspensions from 72 students. So those are metrics to look at. We don't have solutions or anything, we haven't been able to dig into that. That's something we'll do in our data digs as we roll into setting up our scorecards, our action steps after strategic planning. Because obviously getting at this sort of thing is important, and identifying the why, and we don't really have that, but unfortunately the trend continued.
Is it possible as we paint this picture to include expulsions or withdrawals? Or do you
We
categorize those differently, or is there a correlation at all, or?
we can, we just have to make sure that we we gotta make sure that they're not personally identifiable in terms of information.
Is it
I care
five?
just numbers, just to
If
be,
the number is 5 or lower, it's not reported.
oh, okay,
Right,
You're covering Dan.
oh, sorry,
alright, that's a good point to know.
yeah, so there's
Yeah, I don't know how many we had, but.
usually we rely on the state data, but we do have all of that information.
Okay.
I just wanna be really cautious with it, with respect to
That's fair.
privacy, FERPA, and these sorts of things, so, that's really the overview, total number of entries, if you look at the high school. And if you look totally left now on this graph, which was created by, Brianna up in our office here. So she created all these graphs for us, so thank you to Brianna. I think Brianna did. right?
She did,
She totally
absolutely, yes,
did,
she's
yes.
our data analyst in the district.
So you'll just notice the high school to the middle school, total number of entries, 1128. That's everything overall, minors, majors, suspensions, detentions for attendance, everything. So at the high school, there's a lot more overall entries, but you can also see on the next slide that the high school has many more minors, almost twice as many, right? It's 837 to 403 at the middle school. I don't have the answer as to why, if that's a question that's coming up, but that's something I've already talked to the principals about a little bit, the high school and middle school principals. We'll be diving into like attendance, it's probably attendance related. I wouldn't have that answer for you today. But a couple of other numbers here, you'll look at the different, I've been told the other and non-specified, they're just numbers that are too low, and they probably can be teased out based on that factor. But I think that you see a lot here. There's information here that provides a pretty good snapshot of the kind of year we had from behavioral incidents. And I think it's reflective of some trends that were already publicly reported and that we're working on. Questions?
And usually a minor is reported by and handled by the classroom teacher.
Yeah.
And then majors are the things that trigger the administrator, usually in these cases, the assistant principal or the behavioral interventionist to step in and then handle those, so in a middle school and a high school, you have a lot of teachers and a lot of kids that have a lot of teachers, so those are, minors are things that a teacher would handle. It doesn't rise to the level of having the administration step in.
Yeah, and then some of the minors that are sometimes handled by administrators
bit
are attendance related.
Yeah.
So I would be, and we can tease that out, I don't know that, I know it for sure from when I was a principal, which isn't that long ago. But when you're a principal or an AEP, you're gonna deal with attendance, probably yourself and or with a school resource officer, cause there are tickets that are issued sometime for truancy.
And the
But-
social workers.
Right, and the social workers are involved, but the actual discipline for those minors, attendance is a minor, it's not a major, you're not gonna suspend somebody for truanting. you're gonna try to deal with it and try to change the behavior with something in the school. Usually detentions or lunch restrictions or something.
So I think I had about the majors and minors, and even when it
Yes.
was brought up before, was, how do you assess that, the criteria for that? Is it consistent? Because I think if you have different subjective teachers evaluating or assessing what is a minor, I think it will vary. And so I'm looking at like accuracy of data.
Yeah, the minors, the majors are only done by administrators.
But
Any-
like who are reporting it, right? Because one teacher may see it as a minor, which is another one may not. And so that's what I'm looking at is
The teacher's not gonna code things the administrator,
meaning as a minor though.
I'll just give you an example. A major, if somebody has some form of suspension, it's a loss of liberty. And meaning that they're being restricted either out of school or restricted internally. And when that sort of liberty is lost, there has to be somebody who's licensed doing that. So that's why that's a must-have, that is a for certain. However, when teachers are issuing,
Like the minors, right?
that information, issuing is a strong word. It comes across and the administrators are seeing it, so it's coming through administrators. So for example, if somebody is at their computer and they're sending something across, that's good, that's systematic, that's quick, you want real time.
So a teacher reports potential minor, it goes to the admin, and the admin is the one that actually makes that discernment where it lies in regards to, okay.
There's procedural due process.
And the other
You
question
need to ask the student, like,
so
I did this for a
also-
living for a lot of years, but if somebody comes in and a teacher says, I don't know, that you stole my pen, or I made that up, right? You have to ask them, did you steal the pen? Yes, I did, and I meant it. Oh, okay, well, probably should replace it, or you're gonna owe for the pen, and then you get a detention too, or vandalism. Vandalism in a school happens. You see it sometimes, a teacher reports it, administrator gets involved, there's a consequence, sometimes in school, sometimes not, but there's probably restitution. They're gonna have to pay for it. So,
Is there a situation where like one student commits, 35 minors? Wouldn't that at some point be considered heavily as a major then?
So
Is
like,
there-
I'll
As
use-
long as they're being
I'll use-
entered into Power School correctly and diligently by each teacher,
yeah, those are,
track that. Is that the question that you're asking?
no,
Because then it doesn't actually get accounted for, right, as a
No, so
major,
here's
that's
what
not
happened.
really.
I'll give an example, near and dear to my heart. In the middle school, there's cell phone. Don't use your cell phone. You get 3 strikes as a minor. On your 4th strike, it becomes a major. So to the point of there are thresholds built into some of these, there are. I'm not fluent with that one, that's just example, it's been
So I think it's in the
hard.
student code of conduct, it's in
Yeah.
the student rights and responsibilities handbooks to the parents. And that'll probably be something that I don't think has been looked at in the district for a few years, so that's on Dan's table, he's still on the phone, that's
he
on
is,
Dan's plate.
he's there.
So,
I got it, that was one of
the
the first things
document
I
that
said
says,
when I
student-
jumped in, is I was gonna say, that's generally a handbook thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so,
the code of conduct and student behavior.
So online, there should be the student rights and responsibility handbook, the student code of conduct is usually contained in there, although on our website, it might also be fleshed out separately too. And then the parents' rights and responsibility handbook, and they're usually always grouped together, and I believe at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Everybody gets it electronically and you sign off on it electronically, but it's
Yep.
also on the website. And I don't think there's anything wrong with ours, I'm not saying that, but I don't think it's been looked at in a little while, and so Dan would be a good set of fresh eyes
Yep.
with Alec, as well assisting with that, any of us who make sense for him, but it's probably something to be looked at, but we do have all of that itemized, and usually, like in the legal world, it's like habitual criminality, like you've committed so many crimes, now it's like a add-on.
Yeah.
And so in the student code of conduct, there probably is that add-on, cause
well,
we've done
there
it
is,
so many times.
there is state statute, so repeated refusal to follow school rules
Yeah.
is an expellable offense.
What-
So
what-
that's straight statute.
Yeah, what pops out here is that the minors at Shady Lane, 270, but the same age group at a different elementary school is far, far less. I mean, more than 4 times the amount.
I think those are some
For the
systems.
same age group
Yep.
of,
Yeah.
I think that goes back to, do we have some standardization around?
Yep.
I think it's a,
That's what I'm trying to say, is in regards to there
I
should
think
be
there's
some.
the,
I mean, the number seems really high to me, having been in Shady a lot this year, because it's like so quiet, you can hear a pin drop in that school.
yeah,
And there's such little tiny peanuts, and I can't believe how quiet and how well they like
Right.
do school, so,
So is there a system-wide consistency in regards to that?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's for
I think
Dan.
yep, that
That's
is,
where I think we could
this-
use some of that overview and redo,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Halverson, they're looking at Ben Franklin and Shady Lane. Those are our lower elementary schools, so littles. So the lower elementaries, there's a pretty large discrepancy between one side and the other. It's probably reporting, and that's a good, I mean, that's something that Mr. Halverson and I have talked about is how we're reporting these things. And when you see a number like 270 minors, like looking at Shady Lane, and then there's 40, I mean, that's a statistical, that's an outlier.
Anomaly.
And we'd have to look at that because it's a lot more consistent looking between Riverside and Valley View. So when you look at Riverside and Valley View,
Right.
they're statistically pretty close.
Right.
More majors at Riverside than at Valley View. And the minors are within 10. So
Yeah.
statistically, that makes a lot more sense from what you're looking at. But it's actually a valid catch. That looks like a systems issue.
Yeah.
That's definitely something Mr. Halverson and I have talked about looking at.
well,
Or,
the majors at Valley View, I mean, that's
Yeah,
more than 10 times
consistency.
the amount. It doesn't make any sense.
yeah,
The
Yeah, when
same
something
age-
jumps out like that, generally it's an anomaly,
Right.
and if it isn't, then
I could see it with the
That's
minors,
usually
but the
first place
majors are,
your attention.
the majors get your
Most of the
attention.
time when you see it like that, there's that big
I
discrepancy.
get the minors, the kids are
That's what it is.
kids are gonna be kids and the kids are gonna be naughty at whatever.
Yeah.
But majors are more than 10 times
So
the
they
amount.
do,
At the
they
same
do
age
have
group
a, they do have documents that they work on, cause I know they've been presented to the board.
Yep.
Like more when I first started here, and I do think the elementary school teachers, not the teachers, the elementary school documents allow for a lot more freedom and flexibility of what's actually being recorded and coded.
I think that this is raw data. The
Yeah.
school district, the school just ended on Friday. So this is raw data and we need some time to,
absolutely.
but I think it's good that you have it. I mean,
For sure.
it's available, we have
I
it.
just want more of the story.
What we're gonna, these are all valid questions. I know we're getting the questions down and we're gonna use it to train on.
Perfect.
We're gonna use this data to train on because it's not the best that we can do, but it is what we did.
It's just trying to get the continuity across the buildings, right? So then
Yes.
when you're looking at data, you can say, oh, that's actually valid data versus now, we're now all calling these numbers outliers. That doesn't happen in science.
An outlier doesn't
Like
mean that it's invalid, it just
Yeah.
means that there has to be something there. I mean, there has to be some,
And then we have to find out what that is.
yeah,
So that's what I wanted to.
What's an example of other, minor, major? other?
yeah, I talked to Brianna about that and essentially I left them in because like I said, it was the raw report that was given to me and I'm not gonna edit that.
Right.
But it was things that are too low to be counted or just, she had a different page that actually explained some of it and it's more technical rounding errors and like I said, you got you have the raw information, including some mathematical, rounding information. Mr. Halverson?
Yeah, not that we wanna get too much into the weeds on this, but one of the reasons why we shifted away from majors and minors is because it doesn't give enough specific detail of what it is we're actually trying to figure out. So, and when you just say something's a minor, there's classifies, there's probably 10, 15 different things that could classify 3 different levels within just what a minor is. So I think that's one of the theories as we look at what it is we want to actually evaluate as our data points. We're probably gonna, break these down into more finite levels of what they actually represent. Cause it might even be just a communication home. If I'm a teacher and I wanna have a log of communication home so I can keep track of contacting a parent, letting them know what's going on, there might just be someone that's doing that instead of actually using a Google Doc or somebody,
And some of on that point, really just piggybacking on what Mr. Halverson said, some of these larger number of minors at the secondary schools, thinking it's attendance related because they're using the auto dialer. They're using the auto dialer in the secondary schools and they don't use the auto dialer in the elementary schools. So that's something that we've bumped into. I'm not saying we're gonna change that, I'm saying that that's a difference. That is a major difference. We have an auto caller going out for the high school and the middle school, and we are not doing that for the elementary schools at this time.
all data can be used for something, but sometimes we wanna be real specific about what it is we're actually looking for before we, put it into a grouping like that. So I think that might be one of the areas we start looking at when we start getting the rest of the administrators together and saying, here's what we need to look at. But I know with the other schools, I think this is part of that Valcom update at some of the other schools too, from safety and security that's gonna be put in. I think that middle school and high school have it now, but the other schools are gonna get it tied in at some point. But at tardy, you think about a student that's tardy every day, that's 187 days, that's a lot of minors getting reported automatically
That's right.
that's not really something that's addressable other than a conversation, possibly totaling it up as a truancy referral.
Alright,
But
so
at the elementary school level, generally, we don't do that.
thank you, I think what we hear is there's more analysis that needs to be done and then some training around getting them standardized. What I'd be curious is to be able to revisit this, I know this year some of these
Absolutely.
numbers were revisited through a school. I don't know if you wanna look at them quarterly, you wanna look at them semi-annually, just somehow for us to keep a pulse so we don't come forward through to either spring or next summer and look at it again, so it'd be lovely to get a check-in.
I think we can set a rotation here
Perfect,
for this committee, that we can do a quarterly check-in
perfect.
Yes.
with this
That was
committee. I think we can pull this now that we've had Brianna set the templates and then start looking at them and because this is this is what we did, but it's not the best we can do. Putting this in front of our administrators and going, all right, we have to start analyzing what it is, just like Mr. Albertson said. Like, a lot of it is attendance, we know that because our attendance numbers are at 90 whatever percent, and we want it to be better. But how many of those are drugs? Right? I think people would wanna know that, we know
I was
that.
gonna say, we've got them in the highest category possible, but it'd be
Right.
lovely to be able to break it down one level
Like,
deeper to.
Or vaping.
Right.
Like, how much of it is nicotine vaping?
Right.
Like, vaping is an epidemic in just about any school. It's pretty bad, and it's out there, and it's being handled at the middle school and high school regularly. That's not here, but I'd wanna see that.
Yep.
I'd wanna see
Yeah,
vaping, drugs, alcohol, and then physical fights, I'd wanna know that too. So
Thank you.
this is a good start.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions or comments around the student behavioral referrals?
Thank you, it sounds like we gave
Yes.
Mr. Halverson more homework when he comes on board.
Yeah.
He's doing just great, he's bought a house, he sold a house, he's in the process, so.
Yeah, I've had appraisal tonight.
So it's,
Moving on to future agenda items, and I know that this is our first meeting, so I'm guessing that you have some ideas that you would like to share.
Yes.
All right.
Alright, so I just, as we were talking, jotted down sort of in this space, so obviously we just talked about we're gonna do a quarterly check-in on behavior. You referenced earlier in our discussion being able to talk about the new structure for special ed.
Mhm.
So making sure we're including that. And then, Leah, I think you mentioned code of conduct, student code of conduct and rights and responsibilities, both that handbook as well as the parent handbook, looking at the refresh of both of those. And then I don't really have a specific on it, other than obviously once we hire an athletic director, I would love to see first 90-day plan out of an athletic director, of what they're gonna get after.
we were just doing screening interviews today. So we had, was it 35, 40 different, something, lots.
Oh yeah, I think it was over 40.
Yeah, it was over 40. So I know that between the assistant principal at the high school and the athletic director at the high school, and district-wide, obviously athletic director, is everywhere in the community, it's well over 100 between.
sure.
Well over 100 applicants between both positions. So I spent the majority of today working with several other staff members doing in-person screening of some of our top candidates to get to a smaller group for interviews next week.
People wanna come.
For actually both positions. So we're looking to screen tomorrow for the assistant principal position, so we have, I think, 10 in-person candidates coming in. Sounds right, yes, I see head shaking over there. So, and then we'll screen that group down with a small group of us to get the 3 to 4 final candidates that will come in person for the larger interview teams next week.
Awesome.
So we'd like to get those things done next week.
That's all.
Okay.
90-day plan for interviews, student code of conduct, new sped structure, that might be good for July.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah, Alex starts July 1st,
Yep.
so.
Yeah,
And Dan will be here.
yes, Dan will be here July 1st.
right.
Yep. Ready to rock and roll.
That's what you signed off on, Dan, I have the copy. I said, I have the copy that you signed off, July 1st, you're ready to go.
I'll have my new shirt, my new lunch bag ready to rock and roll.
We got them all geared up.
Okay.
We don't want any of those Mosby lunch bags coming around.
Wow.
I do have to talk to Mr. Gebauer about getting some notebooks that don't say Mosby proud on them though.
We'll get you hooked up, don't worry. We'll get you all hooked up.
Travis, did you have anything that you wanted to address? Again, knowing that this is our first meeting, wanna make sure everyone has a chance to.
Right, yeah, I think Shelley covered it, the athletic director, 90-day, plan, I like that.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
Maybe that's a July thing as well. Matter of fact, it would almost have to be.
Right.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be.
I mean, otherwise,
Yeah,
it's
that's the
30
90
days and
days.
it just
Yeah.
depends on when they start, so that's the part that,
Yeah, so usually, depending on the district, I mean, these folks would probably also be on a contract that ends June 30th. Now, that being said, I'm not exactly sure when all of the final interviews and decisions will be made, but they'll be starting close to July 1st, if not July 1st. I would probably say we should make it a later July meeting though, like not the very beginning of July.
Right.
give some
I
of these
mean,
new folks.
They won't even get their lunchbox. So, like, I mean, I think if we're gonna do July, we should probably pick later in July, just to let all of our new folks actually acclimate and have a chance to review all of the current, documents and things that we have in place, so they can build their new structures and plans around that for you a little bit better.
Yes, I do like that, thank you.
And we'll have an active July, but we're excited.
Yes, well, it's all good things happening. I did want to look at, the code of conduct discrepancies. If you mentioned that they haven't been looked at in a while, just to get eyes on that, what does it look like in our elementary schools, middle school and high school? How, similar are they, how different are they? And, like I said, just kind of a review on that. I know that as we are setting things in motion today, going forward, I just also wanna make sure that we're reviewing things, on a timely basis. So for example, curriculum, we look at something every 6 or 7 years. How often do we want to look at some of these documents? Just something to think about as we're establishing the committee and going forward. Making sure that we're kind of keeping eyes on the areas that we wanna watch, and then in a timely manner that makes sense for that. Let me see here too. Oh, I would like at some point an update from the Donovan Group for our communication. I think that they had sent out an email that I read through that gave a lot of really good information. They're auditing the website, kind of what they're doing now, but the results of that. So I don't know that would be ready for July, but whenever that makes sense, then they have those numbers for us to look at.
Work in progress right now.
Yeah, they're actually finishing the website audit this week, next week, and they're meeting with several principals. I believe not this week, but next week. Yes,
Yes,
And
because they were gonna interview community members.
Yep.
That actually ties into the strategic plan.
Yep.
Also to the communication aspect of it and how to streamline to the importance of the information.
if I remember
So
correctly.
maybe that would be to the full board.
Well, you can bring it to committee first and see it.
Yeah, I mean, whatever makes sense, I just definitely wanna make sure that we're gonna get
Tangible.
tangible
Yes.
Yep.
numbers there and the update as they move forward, because I know that they're looking at
Yeah,
quite a few
Mr.
things.
Nichols, the partner from the Donovan Group we're working with, he had already asked me about when he was gonna be presenting to a committee or the board.
Okay,
So
perfect.
he's actively working on this. In terms of the website audit and, you know, there were some snafus with people's schedules and vacations and who can meet when. But I know Isabella has been directly involved in coordinating some of our parents and principals
Okay,
to meet with Mr. Nickel, to provide him, you know, feedback. You know,
Okay.
some of which we heard from the steering committee, but then, you know, broaden that out to the principals a little bit and then see how much deeper we wanna bring it, but he will definitely be presenting to either this committee or to the board as a whole. And he's asking,
I think full board would be better.
Yeah,
In a way.
yes, and I think it's a very important piece and it fits in with the strategic plan, so the full board makes sense to me. And
So if we're gonna be consistent, we bring some of that stuff as preliminary,
Oh, yeah.
flush questions out at the committee level, and then it goes to full board. Not much changes, but like through finance, that's what we do a lot of times with some of those reports and.
All the other committees do that.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, rather than skipping right to full board, it'd be nice to be able to see it here, offer some input and feedback before it goes to full board.
I'm just saying that the full
Perfect.
board should also be.
1000%.
absolutely.
and then I know that I had talked to you about this, maybe for the fall, looking at September, October. I would love to see a presentation from the school counselors and just kind of what that picture looks like at each of the schools. And just kind of, you know, some questions like, you know, when they meet with the students, how often, if, you know,
Kinda like
the high school is so different too, like if they're working at college, you know, helping students kind of on that pathway
Means of
versus,
Service.
correct, yeah, just kind of get a picture of
Sort of like
what-
this presentation, but
absolutely.
for counselors.
Mhm.
So
I think
that'd
that would be very helpful.
be good to show, I could just show that to the counselors and go, hey, tell us a little bit about your,
Or don't charge them, let's see how creative they can be.
well, it's already public, so
Call me tomorrow.
it will be tomorrow when we get it out there. So let's see it and just to give them an idea, hey, we're just looking, you know, because to actually look into even a principal, I was using it as an example.
Mhm.
Usually a principal is about a third of their job is observing instruction every day.
Yep.
And that's not brought up a lot, but when you become an experienced lead principal, it becomes more of your day. It's close to half of your day on most days, observing instruction. There's aspects of what counselors do that it's critical systems work that I think it would be really a good report. So that's something that we'll work on, Mr. Halverson and I.
Yeah.
With the building principals to.
They have that in their report too, meeting with more students individually and implementing small groups.
Yep,
So, that's on their report.
a little bit, yeah, but expanded, yeah, for
Under,
sure.
we need to
Yeah.
be doing, but don't have time for
Social workers and
staff.
psychologists, yeah,
Their wish list there.
yeah,
I would say at the elementary levels, the counselors probably do work a little bit more with the social workers. They're a little bit more grouped and they're very different at the secondary.
right, the needs are very different of the students.
Yeah, I mean, the high school counselors who I've worked with most of my career, they're working on transitions, whether it's IEP transitions, but it's transitions from high school to work, military,
Right.
trying to, you know, find career pathways. So one thing that I'm certain the counselors will talk about is career pathways.
Mm-hmm.
It's become a lot more core with counselors.
Okay.
And there's these
Academic career plans.
yes, yeah, ACPs. So
Yeah, cause one of the things that had, you know, stuck out to me with that presentation from the parents and teachers. You know, one teacher had a concern that there's some students with like 2 study halls and, you know, I mean, I just would like to talk to a counselor about like, how does that happen? You know, how can we help that student capitalize on the opportunities here a little bit better, right? And, you know, that kind of leads to my next topic.
Yeah, there could be a very good reason.
I was gonna
It-
say,
it
I
could
know,
be-
I know people that
There-
ask for it intentionally.
It could be an
Yeah.
internship, they could be involved in an exterior
sport.
internship.
Well, that leads to my next, you know, point was the school to work. I know Lisa Kiefer does a lot of work there, but like, you know, what does that program look like? I'd love to see more information on that. And then, just to get a baseline.
Yep.
And do we want, you know, can we offer more dual credit? Can we offer more of that, you know, again, they have 2 study halls, but they're leaving it to work.
And some people like,
Things like that.
they will call intentionally, like we just got the preliminary schedules and there's one study hall first semester, one study hall second semester. And I know some parents intentionally move both study halls to second semester so that they don't miss as much class. They try to put them at the end of the day, so say they're in golf or say they're in a varsity
Sure.
sport, then they are not impacting their academics. Which means they've got a really robust first semester where there is no study hall and then they're still taking likely rigorous coursework. So there are a variety of scenarios in which I do support the school being really flexible to meet these students' needs, so.
Oh, absolutely, I agree with that.
There's programs like GPS Ed that we have anywhere from 9 to 10 students this year that were in GPS Ed. And it's a work-based program that for high school students, but there's programs like that we're regularly looking into that would only benefit our students to have more robust offerings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that.
And looking at student services, how can we serve the students?
Exactly.
So, does anybody else have anything that they want to add as far as possible items? I mean, at this point, I think we're building,
That's
Yeah,
pretty
we'll-
robust.
pretty
we're
big
building a
list.
couple months out here.
Yeah, we have, but we're gonna build it into future agenda items so that it's listed there. So when we come back to the next meeting, you can see it in future agenda items.
Perfect.
And then we'll use that as our operational list, but I think this is a good start.
Yeah.
You know, we've set up actually some systems, quarterly checks on, you know, incidents and majors and minors, and then getting into some specifics here. Some big overviews about school psychologists and school social workers, which I think is just, it's great information for the board and the whole community, anybody watching to know about that. The safety aspects of things, you know, we have spent a good, you know, time, talent, energy, dollars to, you know, pull up that infrastructure, if you will, this year. And one of the things I know that Mr. Halverson's excited about is continue to ramp up that internal training. You know, the little things inside of Raptor, those things that can make us even better at a system we're already very good at. But there's always active training, because we're gonna have some new staff and summer happens and, you know, you want to have
Going back into the fall, those
Yep.
refreshers.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to set the next meeting date, and I know that when I had sent out kind of the questionnaire of when are you available? We had quite a few different answers, and so I didn't even want to attempt to set anything until we were all sitting here today. We'll look at the later half of July, it sounds like, for the next meeting, and so you know, I guess just I'll start Tuesdays for me, I can be here, the earliest is 6:30. Wednesdays in July, I'm not available, but I will be again in August, and then Thursdays I could be here as early as 4. And so what do you guys, on the calendar here?
My schedule will change between July, August, and September.
Because of school-related stuff.
We seem to be doing 1 month at a time through some of this.
Well,
Yeah.
why you guys throw shade on me like that?
I'm not, you're involved with your family, it's
I
great.
very much am.
You're going to sporting events for your children,
Correct, I
and
will
that is
have
awesome.
some football on Thursday evening,
I
so.
know, I always see you out there.
I think Tuesdays are good, either the 23rd or the 30th.
The 23rd is my daughter's birthday, so I prefer not to meet then. I'm so sorry, my family. But I could do the 24th that week. You said Wednesdays don't work for you. But I could do that Thursday, the 25th.
I can do the 25th.
25th would work.
Thursday, the 25th works for me.
I can't do the 30th, I'm in Kentucky,
Okay.
my son's.
Well, let's do the 3rd, the
Dan was
25th then.
critical.
Thursday, July 25th.
And can you make the 25th work?
Yep, you bet.
Right, thank you.
And then what time did we want that to start?
What time are you able to get here?
She said 4.
Or early on
Yeah,
Thursdays?
6 or 6:30 for me, it's fine.
Okay,
Thanks for it.
6?
6?
6 o'clock on
6,
Thursday, the 25th. Okay.
25th.
This was the welcome meeting. I mean, I normally wouldn't attend unless Dan really wants me to attend with him, I will, as a good colleague, but normally I wouldn't be on student services, I'm just.
And I don't think we're in Kentucky yet, so I'll be here.
Okay, so we're at the 25th at 6.
25th,
Yes.
6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Same room, 3344/45. And I think we have a pretty good agenda.
Oh, yeah, I
Pretty
think so
set.
too.
So.
Did we want to look at August? No, we do not.
Dan's on the phone, he can't see the visuals. One board member who shall remain nameless because Dan is on the phone. But of course, everybody at home can see it, shaking your head no. So, and that's largely because of all of our activities in our kids' events.
I'm
So-
fine with that. We can set the next day at the next meeting
I mean, look,
and then go 6 months out from there.
I will have to move there, miss their activities from time to time. I know I've got golf and football, and so I just don't know what August will look like in terms of, it's probably practices mostly, which will make it very flexible.
What I will share is that all of my children are out of high school and some are even out of college. Take the time.
Go fast.
Take the time. It goes quickly.
Yes,
Take the time.
So Dan did commit to July 25th.
He did.
yes.
We will check with Alex to make sure he may or may not be free on, I mean, I think Dan, we have plenty to bring, but we'll check with Alex to see if he's available that night to bring forward the special ed
Right.
structure and whatnot. And then we'll also have to check with a yet to be hired athletic director to see if they're available, but if they're not, I think August, there is actually a lot on here, so I mean, if that moves to August, we'll have it.
Yeah, it'd be great to meet the new AD on the 25th too.
Yeah.
Because there are summer teams
Right.
that practice or
I'm just gonna say,
actually during the
is
summer.
Brian here through June 30th?
Just through June 30th.
Yep.
So I was nosing around on Pareto Metro Conference, and they do have a lot of the fall sports schedules already out there. So I don't know if those can start being populated into our athletic webpage in the next
Oh,
month.
sure, and I think actually the athletic director assistant is the one that actually does that, and she's remaining, so we'll have some consistency there. I mean, we will work hard to make sure that everybody can be here, but just, since we haven't hired the person yet, we'll get everybody here as quickly as we can. But you can.
We've got it. It's a little tight hiring for these administrators, but I think it was best to let the pool grow as large as it did. I mean, we're really excited about not just the size of the pools, but the depth.
It was quite in a short time frame.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It was quite good. I think
Yeah, the depth of the pools is very good.
Okay, I need,
These
I'm
were,
sorry.
Motion.
these were just posted that pretty recently, so I would say the hiring process is moving nice and
Yeah.
efficiently.
We are.
Very good, very good. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Shelley.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those against? Say no. We are adjourned.
Very good.
That's no extra.
What?